right. Which is now called integrated physiology. And in all honesty, I was the Buffs party captain who then had my own healthcare crisis, figured out what my sense of purpose was in life, and it was serving through healthcare. And then I said, what's the quickest way I can get out of here with my pre-med and get off to naturopathic or conventional medical school? So I started in hospice and riding on the ambulance. So I was an EMT and I love the ER, but I realized the job of the ER is to make sure you don't die today. And they're very good at it, but then they discharge you back to your chronic illness. And there wasn't enough doctoring there to pick up the pieces. So I went off to Bastyr University, and that is in Seattle, Washington, and I did my Doctor of Naturopathic Medicine and my Master's of Science in Acupuncture. And that's where I met one of my best friends in medicine, the Queen of Parkinson's, Dr. Lori Mishley. And I think some of you know Dr. Lori Mishley. She's extraordinary. She is the most published doctor on the planet in integrated approach to Parkinson's, and she is very pro levodopa carbidopa, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute. But I was on the phone with Dr. Mishley last night, and I forgot to tell her I was coming to speak to you all today because we were too busy talking about 50 other medical papers. And for those of you who know Lori, her brain is big, she's a juggernaut, and she really cares about the Parkinson's community. If you are not a part of her organization, it's propd.org, propd.org, and you can register as a Parkinson patient and dump all your information and data on what you're doing, what's helping, and how can we improve clinical outcomes for the Parkinson's community. So I'm going to give you some examples. She's been tracking over 3,000 Parkinson's patients for decades. You guys want to hear what's working? Gluten-free, helpful. Dairy-free, helpful. Half a glass of wine, helpful. Is red better than white? We don't know yet. Frozen vegetables, bad. Canned vegetables, really bad. Fresh vegetables, good. Movement, good. The #1 predictor of Parkinson's progression in her research so far on diet and lifestyle is loneliness. And that is peer-reviewed, reproducible, and published. So basically, loneliness is the biggest predictor of whose Parkinson's is going to move the quickest. Loneliness is inflammatory. Parkinson's is the name. It's what you have. It is not why you have. And we want to spend time, money, and energy on why you have. And if you have an inflammatory disease and loneliness enhances the release of inflammation and inflammatory cytokines, it's going to progress your Parkinson's. So then she republished that data during COVID, because what did we do during COVID? We locked down, right? Bye-bye choir practice, bye-bye Davis Finney cycling class at CAC. Right? More alcohol, less conversations, less hangouts, so on and so forth. So I really cherish Lori as my hero in the best in healthcare, and how she uses levodopa carbidopa is arm swing. So you want to get to a dose that really gets your arm swinging. And then if you don't have that, it's time for an increased dose, but you want to use levodopa carbidopa as sparingly as you can so it lasts, but you want to get that arm swing. Why do I want to get an arm swing? Because if I can do this, then I can go on my Parkinson's group walk. If I can go on a walk, I can release more self-made dopamine, right? And then the medicine's going to last, right? And you've probably heard in the Parkinson's community, people get incredible responses to levodopa carbidopa, and then sometimes it can peter out. And that's where we're coming with longer lasting, new and improved delivery methods, right? So levodopa carbidopa is an awesome medicine, but you have to be focused on what are the other inflammatory causes destroying my substantia nigra, the substantial black region of my brain that is where my dopaminergic neurons are, the dopamine producing neurons are, right? Are there higher rates of sleep apnea in the Parkinson's community? Yes. Has your doctor done an overnight oximeter and screened you for apnea. Did you follow their leadership, and are you actually using a CPAP, or is it in the closet next to your tennis shoes and your pickleball racket that never gets used, right? So make sure you're getting screened for the #1 ingredient for physical life. In 20 years of private practice, I've seen miracles in my clinic. But if we do brass tacks biochemistry, brass tacks physiology, what's the #1 ingredient for physical life? Oxygen. So if I go like this in my sleep, I am no longer making dopamine with the handful of neurons I still have, right? So you have to follow that. The other thing I need to make dopamine or serotonin or acetylcholine or GABA is fuel. So I really want to clean up that diet and make sure that my blood sugar is nice and steady. If I'm running on ketones and I'm doing the Dale Bredesen end of Alzheimer's stuff and I'm going ketogenic diet, I want to make sure I actually have adequate ketones. We use a meter called the Keto Mojo if we're doing ketosis. We have no financial or royalty scheme with them, but we've seen people get stuck in fuel purgatory. I don't have adequate glucose to run my brain. I don't have adequate ketones to run my brain. I'm so lost, my brain doesn't know my butt from my elbow, and I can't make dopamine anymore, right? So we want to make sure that we don't forget the basics in Parkinson's. Follow the oxygen. Make sure you don't have a gastric bleed, that you're not anemic, that you don't have emphysema, that you don't have pulmonary hypertension post-COVID. But the biggest one is the apnea. It's the biggest thing we see missed in Parkinson's patients. Make sure I have steady fuel. Make sure my T3 thyroid hormone is setting the metabolic rate of how quickly I make endorphins like dopamine. And then make sure I'm not lonely. I'm force feeding myself to commune with others. I'm going to do things I like. Maybe I'll do some walk, and I hate walking, but I'm going to do it anyway, right? And then I realized I really like making music, and someone on the walk plays the banjo and I play the fiddle. And the next thing you know, we're getting together to make some bluegrass together. And that's good for my endorphins, and it's bad for my inflammation. It says, inflammation, get out of here. I'm having fun in community, right? So exercise, community, oxygen, fuel, thyroid hormone, not TSH, that's a pituitary hormone, T3 thyroid hormone, right? And the level you want that to be, your T3 free on lab, is 3.2 to 4.4. That is the functional range. Functional means that is the range my brain functions better at. Okay? Sometimes we get to see teens and tweens in our clinic. Their T3 free, I just said 3.2 to 4.4, is 5, 5.6. Do they have hyperthyroid? No, that is a young, power of youth human being. They are annoyingly warm, they are annoyingly energetic, and they are annoyingly metabolic. They can eat 2 bags of Doritos in front of your face and lose a pound, right? So make sure that you're giving your body things to run like this, not like this. Oxygen, fuel, electrolytes, and thyroid hormone all have to be tuned up, okay? And then we gotta move, and then we got to be in community. Even if you're an introvert, pick the things that work for you, right? COVID is a disease of uptightness and isolation. And it's time to take your life back and say, I'm gonna get back out there, okay? So today, we're gonna talk about cannabidiol. This is not full spectrum hemp. This is not gas station weed, right? This is cannabidiol, a miracle anti-inflammatory molecule, okay? CBD, cannabidiol isolate. We're also going to talk about CBN, a molecule that's very helpful for sleep in a recent study. And then we're going to talk about CBG, a plant cannabinoid that is very good for pain. So I'm the director of research and development for Blue Sky CBD because they headhunted me, because a lab salesman who was trying to sell me on cardiovascular biomarkers would come in and I would say, that's nonsense, that's nonsense, that's full of doo-doo, why even bring me that? You need a heart scan and you need a carotid ultrasound. And we thank Dr. Bill Blanchette, our local medical doctor hero, who brought the heart scanner to Boulder, Colorado over 15 years ago. And now Boulder County has the lowest rate of heart attack and stroke in the entire union. It's the lowest rate of heart attack and stroke. That is not because of the yoga pants, the Subarus we drive, and the Whole Foods we shop at. Those were all there before he brought the heart scanner. And I'm going to tell you how many triathletes I sent to the heart scanner, and they are riddled with atherosclerosis. You want to know what I tell the triathletes? What you're doing is very impressive, and it's not healthy, right? Because overtraining is inflammatory. Moderate exercise is incredible. But if you're running and swimming and biking 3 to 4 hours a day, your body's on fire. And that's going to end up as arteriosclerosis, right? So we have this incredible community here, but you have to make sure your vessels are clean. So ask your doctor about, did you get your heart scan? Did you get your carotid ultrasound? So he would come in, the salesman, and say, you need this expensive biomarker. No, I need a $195 heart scan and a $125 carotid ultrasound. So then he became a part of Blue Sky CBD, and I said, hey, there's this doctor who tears me a new one every time I come in, trying to sell him on bogus stuff that's medical waste, right? Waste the patient's time, money, and energy, right? Levodopa carbidopa does not. That is a miracle medicine for the Parkinson's community. But you have to use it to get that arm swing up and get back in the game, right? And that's how you should throttle that. And then if you're doing well, you see if your prescriber can pull back a little bit so the medicine lasts for the rest of your life, right? So I say to them, all right, I've been having patients come in telling me, this balm I've been putting on my knee, this CBD balm was super helpful. And I said, how much is in there? What dose? I don't know, my neighbor makes it in his bathtub. How am I going to replicate your good results on your knee with the next person if I have no idea what you're using, how much you're using, what's in it, what's not in it, right? Is it pure and clean? What's the cost, right? So my big 3 questions for Blue Sky CBD is, are you third party tested for purity and potency? Right? This is the problem in the supplement industry. The pharmaceutical industry is very regulated on this. Purity is there's nothing else in there but what the ingredients say. So our CBD original is cannabidiol and MCT oil, and that's derived from coconut. That's it, right? Potency in nutraceuticals is the amount I say on the label is actually in there. And nutraceutical standard is 10% above or below. So in our Sky gels, this one, but with the Sky gel, is 30 milligrams of CBD. So I am legit and integral if it comes out 27 to 33 milligrams. That's the range, right? So purity and potency, right? Number 2 is I didn't want full hemp, because a hemp plant has hundreds of phytocannabinoids, plant cannabinoids. And when I'm working with MS, or I'm working with Parkinson's, or I'm working with rheumatoid arthritis, or I'm working with headache, some of those cannabinoids can trigger swinging the immune system in the wrong direction. CBD is like fish oil and vitamin D and most probiotics. It's immune neutral. So your immune system's like a seesaw. This is the antibody side. This is the natural killer side that takes out bacteria, virus, and it's constantly going like this. And we want things that bring it into balance. I can fight cancer, I can fight viruses, but I'm not going to attack my own thyroid or my own white matter or my own substantia nigra, right? So that's immune neutral. And that's why I wanted something that was just cannabidiol. And then the third thing is cost per milligram of CBD. CBD is an expensive molecule. CBG is the Rolls Royce, of phytocannabinoids. So in a big hemp plant, all that biomass, this is about 1% of that plant. So when people make a CBG product, they don't put a lot of it in there because it's too expensive of a raw material and it cuts into their bottom line. We don't sponsor Michael Jordan. We don't sponsor LeBron James. We'd like to sponsor Joker and Murray, but we keep our overhead low so we can pack the product with milligrams that get you to therapeutic dosage. It's about improving clinical outcomes. We want something cool to happen for my patients and our customers. Okay, so that's kind of the story. So I said, okay, I told my wife, she says, if you say yes to one more thing, I'm divorcing you, right? This 501c board and this board, and then we're gonna hire a new doc and train them, and we're gonna start a conference for mystery illness and blah, blah, blah. But I told her, I don't know enough about this molecule. I don't know enough about THC and marijuana. So this will force me to study. And so I put about 90 hours into combing the peer-reviewed literature. I almost gave myself hemorrhoids. I was sitting down reading so much about phytocannabinoids. And these are the distilled slides, because we don't want to overwhelm you, about this molecule CBD. Okay, and now I feel very comfortable applying it and knowing how to use it. So that's me. I went to Bastyr, I went to CU for pre-med and undergrad. For those of you who like a podcast on YouTube, we have one called The Vitality Hour. So you can put The Vitality Hour into there. And on YouTube, if you like today, but you want more information, you can put in CBD 101 Dorninger, and you'll see my 90-minute talk that I gave to the Colorado Association of Naturopathic Doctors. It's a really big talk for public and doctors. And I got one slide wrong. CBD is sleep neutral. CBD is sleep neutral. THC, marijuana, disrupts sleep. And marijuana is like a glass of wine. It helps you fall asleep wonderfully, but then you wake up easier. Ever have that experience? Just had a couple of glasses of wine with the girls. Just woo, did I fall asleep nicely. At 3 in the morning, bing! What happened? You drank a glass of sugar all. It's fermented carbohydrate, right? Is there beef vodka? Is there kale beer? No, we find really high carbohydrate substances. We put them in a vat with brewer's yeast. Now at the other side comes the sugar all. And so you go, woo, isn't this fun? And then you go, whoa, whoa, whoa. And at 3 a.m. you go, bing, my brain is freaking out because I'm in a low sugar crisis. And so you spike cortisol and emergency hormones, norepinephrine, epinephrine, adrenaline, and you wake up. And if you're a mom, God forbid, you have like 15 things to worry about. Little Timmy's not home yet. Is he smoking pot with his friends? What's going on? Da, da, da. What's going on in the world? Everything. Blah, and then you can't sleep. And you got kicked out of restorative sleep, right? So THC does the same thing, but it does it without a food or wine. It dumps stored sugar, glycogen, to spike your blood sugar. And then what goes up must come down. Have you ever heard of the munchies? Right? That's a hypoglycemic attack on your brain, right? So THC has some anti-inflammatory benefits, but it also swings your glucose, right? And that's why it's a little bit of a rob Peter to pay Paul medicine. CBD is blood sugar neutral, okay? So those are the details we go into. And I'm not like anti-pot. Like if you like to go smoke a joint and go for a hike and Chautauqua, knock yourself out. You just have to make sure your blood sugar is super stable. You know, anchor yourself with a piece of wild salmon and some broccoli and a delicati squash. All right, so we want to create healthier communities. We want to sponsor the Colorado Association of Naturopathic Doctors, and we love doing things with PAR. We want guaranteed potency and purity. We want to do all the homework for the patient because they're tired. And there's a gazillion infomercials out there with misinformation. We want a zero THC product. And part of this is because of what I just shared, but also because THC upregulates the CB1 receptor in the brain, and that can make you feel anxious. That can also drive obsessive compulsive, bipolar, and schizophrenia. So I'm not anti-marijuana in my clinic, but if I see a family line of alcoholics, I'm gonna talk to Timmy about his family and booze as he's off to CU, ready to join a fraternity. If I see a family of schizophrenia and bipolar and obsessive compulsive and everyone's anxious, I'm gonna talk to them about be careful with the weed. And it's not what we smoked, right? I remember we used to buy the Blue Hawaiian from a grandma in Ward out of a school bus she lived in. True story, it's 23% THC. It's the strongest marijuana you could find in Boulder, Colorado in 1992, right? Now the kids are dabbing with 80 to 90% THC. And they're going into schizoaffective disorder, right? It's too strong, right? It's too strong. It's like having a couple of seltzers versus giving a kid a handle of bean, right? So we like the 0 THC. Do you know the second most common symptom in Parkinson's? Number 1 is movement. Number 2 is anxiety. All right. So you used to be gregarious. You used to be productive, and now you're like, you start getting scared of everything. Dopamine is a molecule of movement, but it's also a molecule of courage, right? Dopamine, ambition and drive, feelings of self-worth, hopefulness, decisiveness, right? Part of our libido and the ability to finish tasks. So you can even feel attention deficit phenomenon with Parkinson's. You used to be very good at getting your tax papers in on time, and now you're filing extensions, and then you're doing this and that. And you're like, this isn't me. I was an accountant, you know, and now everything's taking time. So that dopamine also is part of our courage and is an anti-anxiety molecule. Third-party lab tested with readily available certificate of analysis. So for every batch of Blue Sky, there's a number that shows you the certificate of analysis if you want to go and access that, okay? All right, so how it works in the body. Look at her doing her yoga, right? She might have heart disease. She needs to go get a heart scan and a carotid ultrasound. Just because she does yoga and shops at Whole Foods doesn't mean she doesn't have heart disease. She can have a tooth abscess and have raising cardiovascular plaque, right? So, but bad joke. So CBD interacts with the body's cannabinoid receptors, CB1 and CB2, and allows for self-made endogenous cannabinoids. So what we're saying is your own body makes cannabinoids. It's called endogenous or self-made cannabinoids. Exercise brings those up. Singing in a choir brings it up more than exercise. And if you've ever made music with other people, it is quite joyous. You feel a natural high after that. CBD helps enhance your body's self-made cannabinoids. It's also a cannabinoid itself, but it helps your own. CBD has these 4 major targets we're going to talk about. And if the endocannabinoid tone is inadequate, lower pain threshold, digestive disturbances, mood regulations, and sleep disruptions can occur. So there are 3 bosses in your body: your brain, your endocrine glands, that's any organ, your thyroid, your ovaries, your testes, your adrenal glands, and then your immune system. And these are the 3 bosses of your body. And when they work well together and they play well together, your company, your physiological company, runs well. So imagine we bring Steve Jobs back from the dead, and we get Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, and Donald Trump together in the boardroom, and we say, this company is going to have 3 CEOs. All right, get along politely and run this company well. That's your brain, your endocrine, and your immune system. And they don't always play well together. And that's where your body feels inflammation and so on and so forth. And in those 3 CEOs, it's the immune system, the system that pops off inflammation, that's the biggest culprit. So we're going to use cannabidiol to help bring those back into balance. Okay, that's what your own cannabinoids do, and that's why when you run out of endogenous cannabinoids, you can get IBS, you can get migraine headaches, you can get arthritic pain, you can get depression, you can get a poor night's sleep, because your self-made cannabinoids help coordinate physiological harmony, right? So CBD activates the 5-HT1A receptor for increased serotonin. Serotonin equals enthusiasm. You know what helps make serotonin? Vitamin D. Your genes that manufacture serotonin don't turn on and transcribe, manufacture serotonin without adequate vitamin D. In our clinic, vitamin D3 on lab should be 70 to 100 in someone experiencing Parkinson's. 70 to 100. How much you take, that's the lab. Pulled your blood, and it should be 70 to 100. Thank you. You said 1,000. And how we get there, on average, is about 4,000 to 10,000 international units of vitamin D a day. And your doctor should dose you and recheck you until the lab says 70 to 100, right? So that's 5-HT1 for serotonin. Dopamine 2 receptors for increased dopamine. Again, ambition and drive, feelings of self-worth, hopefulness, decisiveness, courage, the ability to finish tasks. And it also boosts GABA A. It's a miracle molecule. GABA A is your cool, calm, and collected molecule. GABA is your brake pedal. So when you're having a tremor like this, that's not from deficient dopamine. Dopamine moves, right? Levodopa to do this. This is deficient GABA. GABA is a brake pedal, so I should stand still. So we'll see a lot of tremors calm down with therapeutic doses of cannabidiol. Okay? So again, it's not just a dopamine disease. It's not just, we're just going to attack one region of the brain. It just attacks that region hardest.
Is there a test for the endocannabinoid?
There's not. It's a great question. Yeah, there's a handful of things I would love to have commercial testing for that aren't available yet. Yep. There is research testing you can do for endogenous cannabinoids. And when I spoke to that, exercise increases it. They have those draw markers. When they measured the endocannabinoids in the choir singers, they had pre and post endogenous cannabinoids, but they're not available commercially. So I can't order them or bill insurance to order them. Yeah, yeah.
I think that vitamin C, and B12. I think every should take also vitamin D.
You should take vitamin D if you're not at 70 to 100 on lab with any neuroinflammatory disorder, dementia, migraines, depression, Parkinson's, MS, so on and so forth. And on average, that's about.
We could take less than.
Yes. Ask them to put D3 on there.
Oh,
they have to check the blood, yes.
Make sure you get the vitamin.
Well, again, everyone in this room is going to be D deficient if you're not taking D. And when I say everybody, right? We have 320 days of sunshine a year here. How many of you own biodynamic organic farms where you're out in your Speedo or your bikini every day farming? Okay, so you live indoors like me. So the 320 days don't help. And then the way the sun hits the latitude of the earth dictates how much vitamin D you make off your skin. So if you really want to make adequate vitamin D through your skin, you need to move to the equator, find 5 people in this room, open up an organic farm, and just walk around in your shorts all day, right? And those, I just had a woman come home from the Caribbean who was off for vitamin D. It's the only time I've ever seen her D levels go up. It's even worse when you go to Minnesota. It's even worse when you go to Scandinavia. But we had this Garden of Eden, and then we screwed it up. What does every Scandinavian get? Cod liver oil. So where there's places that don't have that sunlight, they get it off the Mother Nature diet that was there for those tribes before we went Western civilization, right? So the point on that, just to say it one more time, is you have to track your personal lab on vitamin D, and it should be 70 to 100. And on average, it's about 4,000 to 10,000 international units a day of vitamin D to get there. And then if you go, oh, I take all these pills and supplements and it's so much to keep track of, and you know, I have to take my levodopa carbidopa on an empty stomach, and this needs to be with food and that. You can also just take 50,000 international units weekly with a meal. Monthly results in peaks and valleys. So if you do weekly or daily dosing of vitamin D, you're going to keep a nice steady state. But if you do a big monthly dose, it goes up and then it crashes and then it goes up again. Okay. So serotonin, enthusiasm. It helps the central nervous system. Serotonin also enhances gut motility. And with Parkinson's, with ALS, with dementia, with MS, you'll see a slowing of the bowels because what's happening in the brain is happening in the guts. So if your brain is slowing, your bowels are slowing. So if you're having a harder time with word finding, if you're having a harder time articulating what you wanted to say, your bowels are slowing down too. So a lot of our patients get some improvement in their GI function from serotonin and dopamine that you get off the CBD. And then 5-HT1 agonists are shown in the literature to dampen nausea. This may be responsible for the anti-nausea effects of CBD users. We talked about dopamine. Cannabidiol is a partial agonist at dopamine receptors. Recent research shows this is the first apparent exception to the general rule that antipsychotics either block or interfere with dopamine at the dopamine 2 receptors as their primary effect. So let me explain this. If someone's running down Pearl Street naked saying they're the lizard queen, right? You're dealing with bipolar schizophrenic, and I'm going to have a psychiatrist on board to help me with that. They will smash them with an antipsychotic, right? And those antipsychotics, Lamictal, Abilify, those kind of medicines will shut down dopamine and glutamate. And for years we said, shutting down the dopamine must be why this antipsychotic works. In Germany, they took 84 schizophrenics and they randomized them. And that just means you count off 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. The ones, not knowingly, either got CBD or the antipsychotic, and the other ones got the other one. CBD worked as well as the antipsychotic for normalizing schizophrenia with less side effects. Okay? Now I'm going to tell you in those clinical trials, they use 400 to 800 milligrams of CBD, which is a lot, and it gets expensive, but it came with less side effects. And one of the biggest side effects of antipsychotics are tremors. Why? Because if you shut down the dopamine, the movement disorder, you'll get someone like this and goes, I don't want to do anything crazy in my marriage or yell at my boss and lose my job, right? But now they don't have dopamine to move their life, right? So we know that these papers are suggested of CBD's ability to deplete glutamate. So if you have Parkinson's and you're feeling really anxious, or if you've been anxious your whole life, you are highly likely to be a low GABA person. Where is my cool, calm, collected GABA? And a high glutamate person. I'm gonna obsess and think and overthink and paralysis from overanalysis. I can't find decisiveness. I can't say, should I break up with her or not? And then 5 years later, you're still dating the person that you're supposed to dump in 2018, right? This is what we lose when these neurons get hit. So CBD can really help calm down that excitotoxic molecule that makes us overthink and worry and worry and worry and worry. And on the worst day, have hallucinations or crazy behaviors, bipolar and schizophrenia, and it enhances GABA, your cool, calm, and collected hormone. So the other cool thing about CBD is it really enhances adenosine 1 and adenosine 2. And when you get kind of jittery on too much caffeine, that is shutting off adenosine. So my little trick is if I need to wake up and write a lecture for you guys and then go see patients and then watch my kid play basketball and then come home and clear my email and do my tax papers, I might get greedy and have that extra shot of espresso that I shouldn't have had. Then I just take 1 to 2 droppers of my CBD original and it takes off the jitters of the caffeine. Right. So what we're saying here is that CBD has some mild overlap for all your neurotransmitters on preventing reuptake. So they stay in the brain longer and they help you feel cool, calm, and collected, but focused, capable, right? And I tell people all the time, they're like, bro, should we do some CBD and veg out? And you're like, no, this is an uplifting productivity molecule. I take my CBD in the morning, right? The CBD CBN gets you into a deeper sleep. That's our sleep gels, right? So, is CBD an endogenous cannabinoid? Is it one of your God-given, my body can make this on my own cannabinoid? No, it is a phytocannabinoid. It comes from the plant, phytocannabinoid, that enhances your self-made cannabinoid and then also has its own activity. So you can get toxic from too much THC. You can just eat gummy bear after gummy bear after gummy bear, and what you can get is cannabinoid hyperemesis, where the THC wrecks your hypothalamus and you're sweating bullets while you're freezing and vomiting. Do you know the #1 hospital who receives cases of cannabinoid hyperemesis in the United States? Boulder, Colorado. Right. Back in the day when we were just smoking joints, you couldn't get there. It's like, how much weed can you smoke? It's like drinking beer versus drinking Beam, right? You know, you get past 12 beers, you're gonna pee your pants, but you can put down a handle of Beam. Now the marijuana is so concentrated, we can get there, we can get cannabinoid hyperemesis or THC toxicity. CBD is the antidote that kicks THC off the CB1 receptor, right? So for those of you who have grandkids, and little Timmy got 2 stoned at the Boulder Theater tonight, the original Blue Sky CBD is what brings him down, right? And think about that. The marijuana that everyone in this room possibly smoked, right? That was low THC, high CBD, right? Just the ditch weed, the weed that you see grow in the mountains. And then what we did is we bred that marijuana, CBD down, THC up. And that's because I want to get out of my mind, right? And now those kids on the hill are dabbing 80 to 90% THC, triggering psychological disorder called schizoaffective disorder, right? So cannabidiol has a lot of use in mood, mental, emotional. It's not THC, but some hemp products have THC in them. You're allowed to have 0.3% THC or less. And I still have patients who get high off 0.3% THC. They're 1-sip Sallies, right? And we want to give them a 0 THC product, right? We also have, you know who needs pure cannabidiol? A police officer, a firefighter, right? A government worker. Have you been to the state capitol lately? I've been there 3 times this year for naturopathic legislation stuff. I would rather chew broken glass than be a representative or senator. What a gross job of lying, deceit, trading wampum, looking someone in the face with a pretty smile when you're like, I hate this person, right? Oh, such a wild thing, politics. They need to take a couple dropperfuls of CBD, leave the Capitol and go for a hike, you know, come back and do something for the people. So CBD is intoxicating, is not intoxicating and does not get you high, but does have beneficial psychoactive effects. So I hate this because people say CBD doesn't have psychoactive effects. That is full of doo-doo. It is an uplifting productivity molecule, but you don't get stoned. You get uplifted and go, hey, I am going to do those tax papers. You know when I hit another dropper full of CBD? When I have charting this high and I'm overwhelmed and I want to procrastinate and run away. And I take a dropper full and I go, okay, we can get through that. We'll sit down and do this right now. So it's kind of, oh, okay, focus up.
The original gel, you dopamine, you need more energy.
Yes.
How often during the day?
I'm going to go over dosages at the end. That's a great question. Absolutely. And I'm going to tell you how I work with Parkinson's on, is it CBD or is it CBD, CBG? And
Are you going to get into the relationship of all this to hypertension?
yes, yes. Yeah, I wasn't going to, but I will, because this is a miracle molecule for hypertension. And in that situation, if you're on BP meds, you should be working with your prescribing doctor. We'll just address it right now. Cannabidiol is amazing for hypertensive crisis, but I don't see it crash low blood pressure people. So it's adaptogenic. It's really wild. And when things are adaptogenic in herbal medicine, that means it'll take a low to the middle and it'll take a high to the middle. And why I'm comfortable using it with other prescriptive meds that aren't working well enough to stabilize blood pressure is it works in the higher centers of the brain. So it has a different mechanism of action, right? And I'll tell you, I grew up in the 80s, right? Do the exact opposite of everything public health taught you in the 80s, and you will live long and prosper, right? They told us cholesterol predicts heart attack and stroke. It's a worthless marker for finding out who's going to drop dead of a heart attack first in this room. Get your heart scan, your carotid ultrasound. They told us fear the fat. They told us eat the food pyramid, lots of grains and minimal healthy fats. Literally turn that pyramid upside down and you have a semblance of a healthy diet. Lots of healthy fats, low grains. They told us salt is Satan, eggs are the devil, and nerves don't regrow. Right? This was the legacy of public health, right? So we have a lot of those people who are also around with Nancy and Ronnie on the just say no. And now we know that psilocybin is helping with PTSD and military vets. We know that MDMA, ecstasy, can regrow brains. But we do know that cocaine and alcohol still destroy your brain. And who does cocaine without alcohol, right? Show me one of your friends who's just like, dude, I'm just doing coke tonight, right? They're gonna start with their cocktails and out comes the 8-ball and then the brain destruction, right? So the intention of just say no is appreciated, but a lot of our patients got stuck in, if it's anything to do with marijuana, it's gotta be bad. And then we have some leftover, and I love my Republican patients, I love my Democrat patients. If you're a human being and you walk in my clinic, you have a right to get healthy. I don't care your creed, your race, your political affiliations. I'm an unemotional, apolitical, objective, lean, mean diagnosing machine because I'm a doctor and I'm not supposed to let my political affiliations cloud my critical thinking on your care, right? I've had patients who got yelled at for getting vaccines and patients who got yelled at for not getting vaccines. I'm like, are you out of your mind, doctor? Like, when did you get all weird on your patients? Talk to them about why do you want to get a vaccine? Is there any side effects we should be worried about? Why do you not want to get a vaccine? What's your game plan, right? So there's a whole weird world, but some people come in with that leftover, anything to do with the hemp plant, marijuana plants, gonna make me, get involved in orgies and rob banks and turn into, a reefer madness weirdo, right? The way we get those folks is their uncontrolled blood pressure. And it is amazing. One of our founders' father was like, "Oh, this is weird. You're doing this." Only thing that works for his blood pressure is Blue Sky Original CBD. And he's like, maybe I should rethink this cannabidiol thing, right? So it is an awesome standalone therapy for high blood pressure. It can also be combined with blood pressure medications that aren't adequate, but that you have to do with your prescribing doctor, right? And then all my patients have a blood pressure cuff. So they're all gonna be regulating that, right? The biggest thing I saw at Fraser Meadows Retirement Community, I worked there for 10 years, was seniors getting over medicated and now being dizzy and fatigued from blood pressure. All right, so if you're on too much BP medicine, you do start doing this, right? So the biggest reason for hypertension in my clinic is untreated sleep apnea. It is rampant. And remember, 1/3 of all apnea patients are thin. We were trained in naturopathic medical school and Dr. Blanchette in conventional medical school to look for a 450-pound morbidly obese type 2 diabetic for apnea. And my bad joke is if you miss that guy, it's time to quit. You're not going to be good at this job. It's the thin, lanky person with flabby throat muscles that is getting missed in healthcare. And that's the Parkinson's patient, majority of time, right? So the number one cause, while I'm going to give Blue Sky to help out of control blood pressure, I'm hunting for the underlying causes of why high blood pressure. And then as we find those and remove those, we might have to work with the prescriber on lowering BP meds or lowering the original because you don't need that much. From the Blue Sky, it's more about you don't need to spend that much money, right? The problem is taken care of. So from the traditional prescription, you can over medicate a patient now, and now they're dizzy.
How about
Thank you.
Yeah.
How about orthostatic hypotension?
Yes.
A lot of Parkinson's.
Yes, absolutely. So if you're a Parkinson's patient, I highly recommend you have a blood pressure cuff. And like everybody who's got Parkinson's, you check your blood pressure a couple times a week. You always want your top number to be triple digits, right? 105 over, 112 over, 126 over, right? And if you're in the 90s, I've never seen cannabidiol lower that. And that's where I was explaining adaptogenic herbs. And it's because they work up here. They don't work so literally here. So they're modulators, right? But in 20 years of private practice, I have reduced blood pressure with other herbs. And if we didn't have a blood pressure cuff, I wouldn't have understood why they weren't feeling well. The very first time I ever did that, I was doing a stop smoking program at CU Boulder, and it was open to the public. And I remember I drew this flaccid cigarette for the kids to show, hey, you know, cigarette smoking breaks penises. And they didn't like that one that much, but I was just trying to hit them below the belt. But I had a lot of adults too. I guess CU kids are half animal, half adult, but I had older people come, and we were doing 5-needle acupuncture in this thin, lanky woman who was on 10 milligrams of lisinopril. And I had all the time in the world, and I was checking up on everybody. I said, how you doing? She said, well, I haven't had a cigarette in 3 days, but I feel dizzy. How quickly does blood pressure drop when you remove cigarette smoking? 48 to 72 hours. So she wasn't doing the thing that was causing the high blood pressure, right? So she didn't need the 10 milligrams of lisinopril anymore. So now she's over medicated. So this is what you'll see with type 1, type 2 diabetes and blood pressure people. If they get on a gut cleanse and they start working out and they take Q10 and vitamin D and fish oil and treat their apnea, you got to be managing their meds if you're the prescriber or with the prescriber if you're doing all the integrated stuff. So yeah, it's a really good question. So having a blood pressure cuff is critical. And if you're not staying in the triple digits, talk to your doctor. The heart is in the living room. The brain is in the attic. We need an anti-gravity machine called tension. And conventional model is appropriately worried about high blood pressure crisis, but we're not worried enough about low blood pressure.
So will the CBD affect
I-
hypo?
I have not seen it affect hypo yet. Yeah. Yeah, and that's 90% of my practice. So remember, I see chronic mystery illness. 99% of the people I see are low blood pressure people, right? And that is part of their illness, right? They start getting science experiments growing on their toes, and penis stuff doesn't work as well. They start forgetting things. They go to give you a hug and their hands are freezing, right? That's all lack of perfusion, right? You ever go, I can't wait to boogie board, and the bay is totally flat and there's no waves? That's low blood pressure. There's no, and then a hypertensive crisis is a tsunami, right? So this is my Advil, right? This is what I use instead of non-steroidal anti-inflammatories. I'm not anti-ibuprofen, I'm not anti-Aleve, I'm not anti-Tylenol. If you use it and overuse it and abuse it, you will destroy your kidneys, intestinal lining, and liver. It's a guarantee, right? You know what everyone's favorite sleep drug was at Fraser Meadows Retirement Community? Tylenol PM or Advil PM. Why? Because the anti-inflammatory effect allows your brain to release melatonin and sleep better. But you're destroying your intestinal lining, your liver, kidney in the process. So my chronic headache sufferers, my gymnasts, my weekend warriors on the triathlete, they're doing 1,200 milligrams of Advil. And they're going to pop an ulcer or destroy their kidneys and liver. So we have to find other ways to do that. All right, land in this plane. So Parkinson's. So what we know so far, if you go to clinicaltrials.gov, and you don't have to, but if you're interested, and you put in CBD Parkinson's, you're going to see how many wonderful clinical trials are in the hopper right now. But what we know is that CBD helped with rigidity and spasticity and quality of life for the Parkinson's community. That's all I got for you so far, right? What I'm going to tell you in my clinic is we see improvement in tremors, we see improvement in anxiety, we see improvement in overall well-being, and just like using levodopa, carbidopa, we're going to use that wave to get people on the stationary exercise bike or get people to go to the walk. And then they're going to start making their own. Now they're going to have the capacity to deal with, oh my gosh, I have to learn how to use a CPAP, right? That takes grit, that takes dopamine, that takes serotonin. It takes enthusiasm to want to learn how to use a CPAP. It's a pain in the butt. I use a CPAP, right? Yes, that is the #1 most trusted, consistent results way to treat apnea, right? Okay. So it would be nice if you could hire Marilyn Monroe to come into your bedroom and resuscitate you every time you went, but the CPAP does that. Yes. Yeah. Yes. Little zapper, and we've seen mixed results, unfortunately. A dental appliance is a 30% fix rate. So if you fall into 30%, you're great. If you fall into 70%, they don't tell you about it. And that's why all of our Parkinson's patients have overnight oximeters. So the big sales pitch on the dental appliance, if you're in the 30%, great. Show me the money test. Show me if the oxygen's staying up, right? And if it's not, the dental appliance isn't working. Sometimes for CPAP, we even have to put an oxygen concentrator to plug extra oxygen into the CPAP if you're at a Mile High or if you're at Estes or if you're at Breckenridge, right? So anything that's a pain in the butt, America doesn't like to do, right? Everything I cherish in my life, I've earned. Good moments in my marriage, moments where my kids tell me what's really going on in their life and feel safe and comfortable around me. Seeing a patient graduate my clinic. All that is a pain in the butt. It is not quick and easy, right? So if you have apnea, embrace the grind. And then one day you're going to wake up and go, holy cow, I'm oxygenated and I'm noticing the difference. And then it's cumulative. So 3 months of oxygenating is going to only improve more at 6 months, 12 months, 3 years, 5 years. Okay. So what I see here is just really an overall improvement of well-being, rigidity, spasticity, laying down to sleep, more comfort, feeling a little bit more upbeat, and then we capitalize on that. This is a study, Kaylee, who just basically a young woman with severe anxiety. The only thing that ever worked for her is cannabidiol, pure cannabidiol. So it really, so in this person, you'll be like, oh my gosh, she's beautiful and she's with her dog and her handsome husband hiking. No, she's an anxious mess, right? And she's totally crippled. Her life is paralyzed mentally and emotionally, right? So it's pretty cool to see some of our customers' feedback. And then sleep. So I think, and I don't have, because of what you're saying about endogenous cannabinoids, we don't have good cytokine testing. I think that's the inflammation molecules. I think a lot of why CBD helps people fall asleep is because when it comes bedtime, their inflammatory load is lower over the day. But then we combine CBD with CBN, and that just got published to help quality and quantity of sleep. So I'll talk about dosages here and we'll call it a day. For pain, have any of you ever used capsaicin cream for pain, the hot pepper cream? So it works really well, but it's a greasy, burning in hell mess to apply. Like you'll put it on your knee and you go like, ah, and 4 hours later, you're like, my knee's better. I know about that cream because I'm a naturopath, and there's real published literature on that. There's scientific studies on that. But the practicality and the compliance is very low. It hits a very special receptor called these glycine receptors and then these TRVP receptors, which is more to know about. But the only other thing I've ever learned that hits that is cannabidiol. And that's why people really love our topical bombs, ankles, knees, shoulders, backs of necks, that kind of stuff. So we also have a topical and I think we have plenty of samples. That's a $30 pain stick there. It retails for $30 and they last forever. Like mine in my gym bag have been in there for about 14 months. Okay. You hurt your elbow, you just rub it on there. Okay. All right. So this is not a Parkinson study. This was an MS study, but there's so much overlap in neurodegenerative diseases, right? So the biggest thing they got off CBD is a reduction in fatigue, pain, inflammation, depression, and spasticity, and an increase in mobility. This is literally taken from the paper. And what I'm going to tell you is the biggest thing it does for one of my MS patients is it relaxes her spasticity so she can sleep. Right, so that feeling of just this kind of stuff, it just relaxes that for her. All right, so dosing and interactions. How much should I take? So we have 3 main product lines. We have the original, which is pure cannabidiol. It's just CBD. That is my favorite for mood, anxiety, uplifting productivity molecule, mildly anti-inflammatory for musculoskeletal stuff. And for that, we have sky gels, and we tell people take 2 30-milligram sky gels, chew them up, and see how you feel. If you don't notice any difference, chew up another later that day. If you still don't notice a difference, chew up 4 in the morning, 4 in the evening. That's 120 milligrams twice a day. Encapsulating stuff is expensive. So if you go, wow, this is super noticeable, then you get the tincture because it's dramatically more cost effective. And 1 dropper full is about 2.5 of the gels. So I tell for the Parkinson's community, you need more CBD than some CrossFitter who's 30 years old down the street. It's 1 to 2 dropperfuls in the morning, 1 to 2 dropperfuls in the afternoon to really see benefit. And it's not much different than dosing the levodopa carbidopa. You want to get to a therapeutic dosage, then get back in the game on treating apnea, lifestyle, getting to the bike class, and then you can back down a little bit from a cost perspective because now you're making some of your own endogenous cannabinoids and neurotransmitters again. All right, so that's the original. Then the second one is the max relief. And the max relief is it's CBD, CBG. It has the Rolls-Royce of phytocannabinoids in there. If you have more pain syndromes, more arthritic stuff, or your tremors doing nothing to the original, you do the exact same thing with the max relief. And that's the one I think we brought today because our most severe Parkinson's patients are responding better to the max relief. Okay. And it would be the same thing. Trial 1 to 2 gels in the morning, 1 to 2 gels in the afternoon. And if you go, hey, that's a better day, you can trial the tincture. And then the sleep gels is a little bit of CBD to calm inflammation, like the Tylenol PM, Advil PM without the side effects of liver, kidney, intestinal lining, and then CBN. Most of our Parkinson's and non-Parkinson's customers, one Sky Gel. And then our most stubborn insomniacs sometimes need 2 Sky Gels. The other thing I tell people is if you wake up at 3 in the morning, you took 1 Sky Gel, you can take another one. As a doctor of underlying causes medicine, the only thing I tell people is to also talk to your doctor about checking your oxygen if you're not sleeping well. And maybe even put a constant glucose monitor and see if your glucose is dropping out too low, right? Have you guys heard of these LibreView on TV and stuff like that? The Dexcom, right? So a very sad story. I don't drink booze that much anymore. I don't smoke weed like back in the old college days on the hill before I found my purpose in life. But I had my glucometer on, and there's one thing that lowers my glucose to 55 at night. It shouldn't go below 80. 1 shot of Don Julio Blanco tequila with soda water. My blood sugar can't get away with 1 drink. And the reason that's a problem is if my glucose goes low, I'm going to wake up with a hypoglycemia hangover. If my oxygen goes low, I'm going to wake up with a hypoxia hangover. Okay, so that's how we talk about dosing. There's one major concern with CBD and meds, and it is the original blood thinners. So if you're on Coumadin, heparin, or warfarin, and most people aren't anymore. If you have a mechanical heart valve, there's a reason to still be on Coumadin. Most people are on Xarelto or Pradaxa or Eliquis if you need blood thinning these days. But if you are on Coumadin, CBD and Coumadin take the same clearance in your liver. So they create a traffic jam that could increase your blood thinner, right? But again, that's the original blood thinner. So that's the big one I work with. If you're on polypharmacy, if you're on 15 medications, make sure your doctor knows what you're doing on nutraceuticals, not just CBD, but also taking this. The only problem is that most of our conventional care providers don't have training on diet nutrient therapy, right? And I'm very comfortable with prescriptions, even though I don't have prescriptive authority in the state of Colorado. I did primary care physician training, and I hang out with a lot of cool, awesome medical doctors, and I know my drugs, right? But when you're using cannabidiol, it plays very nicely with other meds, but not the original class of blood thinners, Coumadin, warfarin, heparin. All right, so sourcing CBD. The big thing I want you to understand when you leave today from this is that Blue Sky is CBD isolate, and that is more expensive to make, and you will not find a more cost-effective per milligram of CBD product line than Blue Sky. Okay? So someone will say, our full bottle of CBD original tincture is 3,000 milligrams of CBD, and it's $125 retail on Blue Sky. I think we might have some discount for the park community. And people will say, hey, my CBD is $55, but it's 3,000 milligrams of full spectrum hemp. And if they're a decent company, they'll have the CBD in there and it'll say 500 milligrams of CBD. So it's 1/6 of the medicinal portion of the plant, the CBD. So that's not $54. You times that by 6, and it's $324 versus $125. So you're paying per milligram of CBD, you're paying per milligram of CBG, okay? And the reason we keep our costs low is so we can pack the product for the most cost-effective way possible so that you get clinical effectiveness. We want you to have an experience. And in 20 years of private practice and using natural medicine, nothing has ever worked as quickly as CBD, CBG, and CBD, CBN. Not fish oil, not turmeric, not adrenal support herbs, and I love all of those, and they use all those every day. But it's meant to come on within minutes to hours to days. If you're using our products and you increase the dosage to therapeutic levels and you're not feeling something over a couple days, probably not going to do much for you. Okay, so that's the other nice thing is you go, wow, I'm the guy who benefits from this. That's all I got. Yeah.
I just wonder for people who don't have a particular health complaint, do you recommend CBD just for general?
Yeah, that's me. Yeah. So yeah.
Should it only be under medical?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I've been through multitude of hardcore health crises, and I'll spare you from my story, but I'll say, wow, like really wild stuff. And I think it's through divine mandate. I'm supposed to experience certain things so I can really understand. I always wanted a surgeon to go through a simulated surgery so they would have to feel their work, right? It's just 6 months for the knee replacement. You're good, you know, feel it. So I've really felt some things, but I'm super healthy now. Thank God. It wasn't fun being sick, right? So the biggest thing I'll tell you is there's one paper I didn't put on here. Brazilian frontline workers, MDs and nurses during COVID, got an exercise DVD and therapy counseling to prevent burnout, anxiety, exhaustion, depression. It was tough being on the front lines for those folks, right? Or they got the exercise DVD, therapy, and 300 milligrams of cannabidiol. So during COVID, I was going home and reading 5 to 6 medical papers a night to make sure I was making the absolute best decisions for our patient population. We have contact with over 3,000 patients. We have 0 COVID deaths, 2 ICU admissions for people who didn't follow. They were non-compliant. We love them all the same. I'm proud of that, right? We had 4% of the world's population. We had 16% of the COVID deaths, and they didn't happen in our clinic. And that's because COVID is a very freaking real virus, but the COVID doesn't kill people. Our self-made inflammation to the COVID kills us. You burn down your lungs with self-made cytokines. So that was all modulating inflammation. So I said, I'm gonna do what these healthcare workers are doing in Brazil, 300 milligrams a day. And what they had is statistically reduced anxiety, depression, emotional exhaustion, and burnout. And as I saw some of my colleagues drink more, right, and kind of wilt, I just kept crushing papers, kept going. Nope, that patient's slipping, their inflammatory levels are too high, we've got to squash that, or they're going to be on a vent with pulmonary fibrosis, you know, and just boom, 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 boom. So during time of crisis, for someone who's super healthy, you can go to 150 to 300 milligrams. And if you're just like a CrossFitter who rides with his buddies on the weekend and stuff like that, it's about 30 to 60 milligrams. And the other time we use it is if you're an athlete or if you get headaches and you're using Advil, try the CBD instead. And I'm not anti-ibuprofen or acetaminophen Tylenol or naproxen sodium Aleve. I'm anti using them too often, and now you have body organ damage, right? So yeah, it's a life enhancer for healthy people. Yeah. One other thing I'm going to tell you about my personal story in CBD is medicine saved me because it's so intense and it's so big, and I have a big personality, and I needed something big to not be like a drunk or a drug addict or, you know, a gambler or whatever. And medicine really saved me that way. But what I'll tell you is A lot of my colleagues really went back to old like college habits during COVID, right? They were now smoking weed and drinking more because it's just so freaking stressful to go through a healthcare crisis and be on the front lines. And if you care, you're super nervous about, did I make all the right decisions for that patient to have the best chance to stay with us, right? And when I have 300 milligrams of the original, I have no desire for alcohol. And one of the slides I kept out of today, because it wasn't here, is CBD's role in addiction. It's one of the things we use to transition people off benzodiazepines. It's one of the things we use to keep people off booze, cigarettes, ramping them off opioids with their prescriber, and so on and so forth. So it's a life enhancer for healthy people. Yes, sorry, yes.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, basically, can you give us any advice when we talk to our medical doctors, how to get them to open up a little bit?
Yeah.
About what's good and not good about our health?
Yeah.
I have a real problem.
Yeah.
Over many years with the traditional doctors not really talking to me. And
Yeah.
I think now they have it in the record and they won't
Yeah.
communicate.
Yeah, so for the recording, is there a better way to open up a better rapport to talk about my life, things I do, things I want to do, things I'm worried about, what's going on for me? Our conventional medical doctor brothers and sisters are suffering right now. And they all gave their kindergarten teacher an apple like I did. They're all overachievers. They all have an ego and want to be good at their job. That's part of going into doctoring. But then you get stuck in a model where you get 3 to 7 minutes with a patient. And the biggest stranglehold on them is time. My new patient visit is 2 hours. People feel that breathability, but I still have to go through your family history. I have to go through all prior labs and imaging. I have to go through all your recreational drugs, all your over-the-counter drugs, all your pharmaceutical drugs, all your nutraceuticals. Before I even talk about your chief complaints, I'm here for my headaches. When are your headaches? How often? So on and so forth. So it's a time-space continuum first that makes us come up with these one-liners in medicine, right? Woman's getting a gyne exam and they say, hey, look at my rash. Can you check this out? And say, we'll just keep an eye on that. I've been keeping an eye on it. The rash is still there. It's right there. My eye is on it, right? But the doctors got the speculum going, I have 32 more of these to do today, and I'm already running 30 minutes late, right? So I think you have to, it's funny because Dr. Blanchette, who I think some of you know, like they switched to a concierge model because of this. And he spends about a half hour, 15 minutes to a half hour on a visit, and his first visit is going to be about an hour. Now he's got a waiting list, and we saved Dr. Blanchette for the weirdest cardiac, you're on 15, but Boulder Internal Medicine's a phenomenal place. And I think they're about $1,500 to $2,000 a year for a concierge relationship. And what you're buying is time. You're buying time with your provider. It's the biggest problem. The second biggest problem is we're choosing teams. And if you are politically on a team, if you are emotionally on a team, I'm team vegan, I'm team carnivore, I'm team Republican, I'm team Democrat, I'm team vax, I'm team no, never vax, you're screwed if you really want to get to know your patient. So when I say the job of the doctor is to walk into their office unemotional, apolitical, and objective, I mean that. And the other thing is just non-judgmental, right? So I think when I look back at my own life and I say, why did you treat your body like an outhouse? It's a temple, right? I think the reason is that line in Amazing Grace, a worthless wretch like me. I did all that. Who am I to tell you that when you vomit 3 times a day as a bulimic, what's wrong with you? Why would you do that? Yourself. Know exactly why you do it yourself, because you're human. right? So I think there's judgments for providers. And one of the biggest ones you're going to bump into in the conventional community is around nutraceuticals, integrated medicine, natural medicine. And then finally, it's ignorance and arrogance, right?
But how do you deal with them if you have to go back to them?
You have to go find somebody else. Yeah. Yeah. Just like if a patient comes in, our deal is I'm Coach Phil Jackson. You're hiring an expert. An expert calls plays to win championships. If Michael Jordan shows up to practice, we win championships, right? But what if coach doesn't show to practice? So if I'm lifting my end of the board and you're doing everything on the treatment plan and we're not getting anywhere, that's my problem. That's my responsibility. I'm going to take responsibility for that. If you're not doing your side of the treatment plan, it's not that we love you any less or we judge you. We are doing good science, and good science is controlling variables. And if there's 7 things you're supposed to be doing and you're doing 2,
body inflammation person and I want to get back on the bike. I'm going to take advantage of some of those free Davis Finney classes, right? I might take 2 max to CBD, CBG before class and after class. And then all of a sudden, 3-4 weeks in, I feel like, yeah, it's getting a little pricey, but I'm not getting that sore because 3 weeks later, my body can handle a workout. All right, so and when I did exercise physiology, all the integrated physiology stuff, about 3 weeks to get off the couch and have your first body turnover. Then at 3 months, you miss working out. About 3 months later, your body's like, I like this class. And that's even before we talk about the community stuff and you're talking to your neighbor and so on, right? Yeah. And then sometimes people need the sleep gel, sometimes they don't at that point. Because again, a lot of times the sleep gel is just turning off a really inflamed American body powder keg. And just say, no, we're going to get melatonin squeezed out here. So, yeah. Yep. But and again, I don't project my healthcare narcissism onto my patients. Original is what works for me, right? And I have other patients where it's the max. That is, if they're going to desert island and can only bring one Blue Sky product, they're bringing sleep. Because even though they like the original, they need to sleep better, and the Sky Gel finally did it for them in a way that's not going to come with long-term side effects. So Benadryl just got added to the aging brain list. So it helps you sleep while it rots your brain, right? So we need to find things that don't do rob Peter to pay Paul.
I have two quick questions. I was diagnosed with Parkinson 3 years ago. I'm 46 now, my young set. And I'm, one thing is just that I'm still in stage 1. I do exercise 7 days a week. When you're supposed to be taking this CBD, when are you supposed to take it? When you're in stage 2 or when you can't? I still get rigid in my right arm, but then I think I work out, and it depends on the day. Most days are much better.
Yeah, so you would be, a lot is stabilized in you, right? So you would be a trial it, and if it takes your B minus, C plus bad days, B plus good average days to an A minus, A plus, it's worth taking.
Okay.
Yeah, so you have to give it a try to know that.
To see it.
Yeah.
And then another quick question: do people with Parkinson, the cardio is really good for them? Does weights?
Yes.
Weight is good for them too?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, ask some progressed people with Parkinson's how their lean muscle mass is doing.
Okay.
And there's your answer. Yeah. So we're physiological financial planners at Roots and Branches. That's my clinic, right? And that's my bad joke. But we need to put 3 things in the bank: brain mass, lean muscle mass, and clean arteries. You put those 3 things in the bank, and you're going to have less memory care units, less premature heart attack and stroke, and less broken hip, and more hiking in the Flatirons at 82.
Can you give us your information for the clinic if we need to?
Yeah, so it's a good time. Our clinic is Dr. Dorninger. D is in David, R is in Robert. Dorninger.
I can't write very well. Do you have a business card?
Yeah, we can put it out in the email.
Yeah, look
And
right.
I want to tell you that if someone wants established care, integrated care that plays well with your neurologist and isn't gonna like get weird on your levodopa and tell you, why would you take a pharmaceutical? You live in Boulder, right? If you want that kind of care, in my clinic, it's actually Dr. Dana Bierke, and I'll give you that, BJERKE. Dr. Lori Mishley, my hero for Parkinson's community, she runs Parkinson's camp at Bastyr every summer. And that is the best integrated approach, the best of prescription with the best of natural, with movement and lifestyle and diet. Dr. Bierke helped. She was Dr. Lori Mishley's right-hand woman for the 5 years she was at Bastyr running Parkinson's camp. I told Dr. Mishley, I'm sending you a gem, because she was